I have 100% completed over 200 games in the last 10 years. But this series isn't really about achievements. It's about the games I played and loved each year and what they meant to me at that point in my life. This is the first episode of a series where I look back at my journey, from 2015 all the way to today. But before we get to the list, I'd like to share where it all actually started. Until the end of first grade, I lived in an apartment with my mom, grandma, sister, and my uncle, who was 13 years older than me. I used to sit there, completely mesmerized, watching him play Prince of Persia, Lord of the Rings, and the classic GTA trilogy. Even before I played anything myself, I was already fascinated by the games from just watching them. That's also around the time I discovered Pokémon Crater, a browser-based Pokémon game. Whenever I was alone at my grandma's, I'd sneak some time on PC and play it. What made it special was how much there was to collect. On top of normal and shiny Pokémon, you could find metallic, dark, and ghost variants. That obsession with collecting followed me everywhere. Looking back, it was probably the first time I really stuck with a game over a long period of time. But before second grade, my parents, sister, and I moved into an apartment of our own. We had a family laptop at home, but we were only allowed 30 minutes a day on it, which for a kid trying to catch every legendary Pokémon was basically nothing. Over the weekends, I'd visit my grandma and spend time with my old neighborhood friends outside, but every now and then, I'd slip away to the internet cafe nearby for 30 minutes or an hour on my own. I'd sit down and play CS against bots or struggle through impossible GTA missions. To this day, I still haven't seen what comes after the RC helicopter mission in Vice City. Sometimes my sister and I would share a PC. She'd control the arrow keys to drive in San Andreas, and I'd control the mouse. We didn't really know what we were doing, but we were having fun together. We'd also bond over Flash games on Y8, especially Bomberman. Now, one game I remember from the internet cafe specifically was this Half-Life mod called Earth Special Forces, which was a Dragon Ball Z game. I remember traversing the map to collect all the Dragon Balls and then turning into Super Saiyan. So even when I wasn't playing on my own setup, games were slowly becoming a huge part of who I was. Growing up, my favorite cartoons were Dragon Ball Z, Pokémon, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Though I'd only realized years later that they were actually an anime. I became obsessed with collecting Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards because of the show, and I think my dad noticed how much I loved them, because for one of my birthdays, he bought me the Yu-Gi-Oh! Kaiba the Revenge PC game. If you ever played it, you'll know exactly what I mean when I say, that hurts. To me, that's the best line I heard Kaiba say. But the Game Boy was what I actually wanted more than anything. I spent years asking for one, until finally, on my 11th birthday, he surprised me with a Game Boy Advance with a copy of Pokémon Sapphire. It is still the best present I have ever received. I still remember opening it and seeing the cartridge itself was this deep translucent blue, not like the other ones who were just plain grey. It matched the game perfectly. I sank hundreds of hours into Pokémon Sapphire and Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team, not just playing them, but trying to collect everything I could. Looking back, that mindset never really went away. By the time I hit my early teens, I wanted to play everything my friends recommended. BioShock, Mafia, Need for Speed. But I had no money to buy games, and I didn't even know what Steam was. So I had to resort to alternative methods. Let's just say I played a lot at my friend's house. I finished almost everything I played back then. The only game I remember beating me was Prince of Persia Warrior Within. But then single purchase completely changed how I saw games. When I turned 17, I bought a CSGO on Steam because all my friends were playing it. I never pirated another game again. And over the next few years, I slowly went back and bought every game I grew up with, just so I could finish them properly on my own profile. All of these experiences eventually led into the first real gaming year I associate with myself, 2015. So when I look back at it, it's not really the start of my gaming journey, it's the start of something I have been building for years. And while 2015 was the year I got my first Steam completions, including one completion I definitely wouldn't brag about today, the games that actually stuck with me are the ones I'll be ranking. So let's begin, starting with number 5, Defy Gravity. And yeah, this is that completion I'm definitely not bragging about. If you look at my Steam purchase history, you can see I bought it for literally 9 cents, right alongside the CSGO. Back then it was the only other game I actually owned. I was just excited to finally play something legit on my own profile. So whenever I wanted a break from CS, I'd boot this up. I ended up putting about 3 or 4 hours into it, but I hit a wall. I got really stuck right before the very last achievement. I was complaining about it to a friend, and he told me I could just download someone else's save file, drop it in my game folder, it would instantly unlock the 100%. So I did it. I got the perfect game on my profile, but it didn't really feel good. For years after that, I'd look at that 100% and just feel kind of ashamed, like I was lying to myself. But looking back, this game actually has a double meaning for me. Even though I hated how I got it, it's the exact reason I never cheated another achievement again. It taught me that having a game sitting at 98% is a million times better than a fake 100%. A 98 has a story. It has emotions, a struggle, and the real reason why you couldn't finish it. Cheating your way to the end completely kills the point. For me, the whole value of 100% completion is being able to look at it and know, without lying to yourself, that you actually did it. Next up, at number 4, is Hotline Miami. After hearing a bunch of my friends praise it, I finally decided to see what all the hype was about. Looking back, this game ended up being a pretty important milestone for me, because it introduced me to 2 things that would shape my taste in games for years to come. It was probably the first truly great indie game I have ever played. Up until then, most of my gaming experiences have been built around big budget titles. Hotline Miami showed me that a smaller game could be just as memorable, creative, and impactful as any AAA release. It's one of the reasons I became much more open to indie games later on. Another thing I learned from it was just how important the music can be. Before Hotline Miami, I honestly never paid much attention to game soundtracks. But here, the music wasn't just background noise, it felt like a core part of the experience. The combination of these intense electronic tracks, the neon visuals, and the brutal gameplay created the atmosphere that was completely unlike anything I'd played before. It was the first game that made me actively notice how much a soundtrack can elevate everything around it. The gameplay itself completely hooked me as well. Trying to clear entire floors without dying gave every encounter real tension and forced me to think carefully about my approach instead of just charging in. The simple but surreal story kept me curious, and even masks managed to feel both cool and strangely unsettling at the same time. Moving on to the number 3. Batman: Arkham City. Around that time, I discovered the Humble Bundle, which was a total lifesaver for my budget. I'm pretty sure I picked up the game from one of those bundles. I jumped straight in, and the dark, gritty setting of Gotham City immediately sucked me in. I loved the free-flow combat. Building massive combos and hitting finishers just felt amazing. The story was so interesting that I actually sat there reading the in-game journal entries for the villains and Batman's allies just because I didn't really know much about the deeper lore yet. Then, a couple days in, I realized this was actually a sequel, so I stopped, went back and played Arkham Asylum first, then came back to finish City. But more on that in the next video. The one thing that did frustrate me here was the achievements. The Riddler trophies in the main world were fine, the environmental puzzles were actually fun to solve, but I absolutely can't stand when a single player game forces you out of the story to grind an entirely separate menu section of challenge maps that don't really add anything to the experience. There were just so many of them here that they actually broke me. I ended up leaving the game unfinished for years before finally coming back much later to grind them out. But despite that frustration, what stayed with me most was how much the world made me want to know more. The villains, the lore, the dark atmosphere, it all made me genuinely curious about the Batman universe for the first time, and that curiosity only grew from there. Coming in at number 2 is BioShock. I ended up playing through it multiple times. The original version didn't even have achievements, but I didn't care. Later on, when we got the free copies of the remastered version, I went back in to finally lock in that official 100% completion. The setting and the atmosphere of Rapture were just so cool to explore. I really liked how the collectibles were handled as audio logs. It made the world feel so much more alive, like you were slowly piecing together what actually happened there just by exploring. I knew that there were multiple endings, so I made sure to save all the little sisters, and man, that ending really hit me. The Andrew Ryan "would you kindly" plot twist absolutely blew my mind, and it's one of those moments I still remember clearly to this day. I don't think I've ever experienced a story in the game that landed like that before. And then, following it up with the final scene of the little sisters holding your hand as an old man was such a satisfying emotional payoff. I think BioShock was one of the first games that really made me feel how powerful storytelling in games could be. It was one of the first times I realized games could deliver stories that stay with you just as much as movies or TV shows. Often even more, because you're the one actually living through them. And finally, my favorite game I played in 2015 was Far Cry 3. I had actually played through all Far Cry games before I had Steam, but once I got my own account, I knew Far Cry 3 was my top priority. It was the first game I actively waited to go on discount, so I could finally buy it and play it on my account. And man, it was just so good. Clearing out a map little by little for your faction gives you this awesome feeling of slow, methodical domination. Far Cry 3 introduced so many concepts that I still love today. For example, upgrading your gear by hunting different animals and using their pelts felt like a true progression system. Instead of just buying an upgrade or unlocking it automatically in a mission, you had to actively go out into the world and work for it yourself. I'm also a stealth gamer at heart. In almost every game, I lean towards agility and stealth over running and gunning. Give me a silent pistol, a bow, or a silent sniper any day. So for me, taking out outposts in this game was pure joy. I love scouting a location from afar, tagging targets, and taking them all out with a sniper rifle to get a bonus XP for never being detected. Of course, we all love Far Cry 3 for Vaz. He is easily one of the best antagonists in gaming history. His voice acting and sheer insanity were just so compelling to watch. But there's one specific thing that makes this game a masterpiece for me. I'm usually pretty easy to please in gaming. If a game has just one incredibly strong, memorable concept, I'm sold. And to this day, I think Far Cry 3 handles skills and collectibles more ingeniously than almost any other game because of the tattoo. The concept of your character getting a literal tattoo on his arm every time you unlock a skill is just brilliant. It feels like a badge of honor. Whenever you learn something new, the tribe marks you to showcase your growth. Even better, the massive amount of hidden relics you need to collect for 100% are actually reflected as tiny dots woven around the tattoo. If I were just collecting them for the achievement, it would have felt like an annoying grindy chore. But because it directly grew my character's tattoo, I was incredibly driven to finish it fully. To top it all off, I really liked how the ending forced you to choose who you had to become. Do you leave with your friends you originally arrived with? Or do you stay and become the leader of the locals you've been fighting alongside the entire game? It was the perfect conclusion to the absolute favorite. And that wraps up my top 5 games from 2015. Looking back at this batch, it's cool to see how my gaming taste was forming during this year. From learning the hard way with Defy Gravity that a fake 100% means absolutely nothing, to discovering my love for immersive storytelling and meaningful progression in BioShock and Far Cry 3. You'll probably notice over these first few videos that I'm mostly catching up on legendary games from the early 2010s. Back then, I didn't buy a single game on release day. In fact, I didn't buy a brand new release until 2019. That first experience was kind of a disaster, but we'll get to that when we reach that year. As timeline progresses, you'll see me start picking up games closer to their launch dates, alongside discovering a ton of incredible indie titles, especially in recent years. But I want to hear from you guys. What did your library look like back in 2015? Have you ever had a completion you regret cheesing, or a game where the collectibles actually felt worth the grind? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed hanging out and talking gaming history today, leave a like and subscribe to follow along with the journey. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Soma signing out.